movement enjoyed by Europeans for decades has abruptly ended.
And most European Union partners will close their borders.
Norway started closing borders Monday.
Only essential movement is allowed now.
We have a lot of traffic jam.
Hello Internet, welcome to Lex Universe. We are right now at the Czech-Polish border in the village of Habartice, and over there is the Polish town of Zawidów. And the reason why I'm here, I wanted to talk a little bit about internal Schengen borders, what they were like prior to the coronavirus crisis and what they are right now. So stay tuned, let's do it. As you can see, we are currently at the state borders between the countries of the Czech Republic and Poland. But as you can see, there is basically no barrier here, and you can freely go across this little river and you're in another country. Well, right now it's actually illegal to do that, but let's get some perspective first. Let's take a look at the history of the Schengen Agreement and the Schengen Area as a whole. So I will talk first about what the Schengen Area is, what are the rules about crossing internal borders in Europe, and if in case you are from Europe and you know what this is all about, then you can skip to this time and you will see what it looks like right now during the coronavirus crisis. But let's start with history. So, what is the Schengen Area? Like in 1985, several countries in the European Union have decided that they will change their immigration policy, that they will adopt united general rules for immigration and for border crossing between these several countries. At this moment, there is currently 26 countries that did sign the Schengen Agreement. 22 of them are actually members of the European Union, so they are already integrated in a different way, and 4 of them are associated states which are not members of the European Union, but they do share the same rules for immigration. These are Iceland, Norway, Liechtenstein and Switzerland, and then there are 3 countries that are de facto part of the Schengen area. These are Monaco, Vatican City and San Marino. They are not members of the Schengen area, but you can cross the border freely. Now, what does this actually mean to be member of the Schengen area? First of all, you have to understand Schengen area doesn't equal European Union. There are currently 5 European Union countries that are not members of the Schengen area. There's Ireland that has an opt-out, and there are 4 countries in the Balkans that joined the European Union later, and they should join the Schengen area in the future. Now, what it actually means to be a member of the Schengen area. Now, for the population, many of the liberties that I have, there are no border checks. As you can see here, there is no barrier, there are no border crossings between the member states of the Schengen area. So you can liberally cross border whenever you want inside the Schengen area. And this applies for the permanent residents of the Schengen area and also for people who have permit to live here or permit to stay here. Which means that if you obtain the Schengen visa, you can cross between all of the countries without any problem. Now, 104 countries in the world can enter the Schengen area for up to 30 days and move freely, which means that if you are a citizen of one of these countries, then you can enter any state of the Schengen area and then you can move to one another and you don't have to go through one single border crossing. If you're not a citizen of one of these countries, then you have to apply for the so-called Schengen visa, and that's another thing. For the member states, we all have the same immigration policy, which means that if someone is eligible to enter one country of the Schengen area, they can enter any country. Some of the other liberties of the Schengen area are the cooperation of the police forces of the member states, the faster extradition of criminals between the member states, and also the shared information database on people and goods within the Schengen area, which is called the Schengen Information System. So these are actually the very advantageous liberties of the Schengen area at the moment. There is, however, one clause that is currently in place, and that is that in case if there is some kind of internal security that is not able to be contained within the current rules of the Schengen area, the member states, the member countries can reinstate the border checks on their borders for up to 30 days, which has been exceeded right now, but I guess laws do not apply anymore. Anyway, so in case such a thing happens, border checks can be reintroduced on the state borders, which is currently the case in most countries. With the rise of the terrorist threats in the 2010s, the external border and the migration crisis, the external borders of the Schengen area has been more secured than in the past. So right now, crossing the external borders is quite complicated. You can see my video where I crossed the Schengen borders from Ukraine to Slovakia, and you can see how much pain in the ass it was. And now let's get to what the situation looks like during the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. At this moment, there are like 3 cases of the internal borders within the Schengen area, and I will talk about each one of them. First, some of the borders are not affected at all. This applies, for example, for Iceland. At the moment of filming this video, Iceland didn't apply any special rules for the border crossings, and one of the reasons is basically all of the European countries has banned travel, and Iceland is quite far away, and you would have to fly there, and there are no planes anymore on Earth, so it's like difficult to get there. Anyway, that's the first case, and it's not very widespread right now. The other is quite a medium step that has been taken by most of the countries, and that means that the border checks have been reinstated on the state borders. That currently applies, for example, the borders between the Czech Republic and Germany, where everyone who wants to cross the border will have to go through the border check, and it's advised, of course, that you travel only in important issues, but generally you can cross the border. You just have to go through the border checks to show your documents, your passport or something, and they will take a note that you leave. Because right now in the Czech Republic we have the mandatory quarantine of 13 days for anyone who returns from abroad, so they need to know that you cross the border. And the third case is, for example, the case of Poland here, which has completely closed borders at the moment, which means if you are in Poland, you cannot go outside, and if you are not in Poland, you cannot cross the border to Poland. However, as you can see, the borders within the Schengen area are really not the barriers that you would expect from the state border. Most of them have been lifted. You could see in the beginning of the video that the border crossings that are closed have been barricaded somehow, but the line itself, like the border line, it's not defended at all. There are some army men going along the border, but generally if you want to cross, you just can cross, probably. I will not try it, even though, like, this is Poland already, so who cares? Yeah, but let's say the spirit of the law is something different than the word of the law, because if I cross to this place and then return back, then who cares? So that's the thing. When we talk about the Czech Republic, then borders are closed with Poland and with Slovakia because they do not let any foreigners to come to their countries. With Germany and Austria, the situation is a little bit different. You can cross the border, but you will need to have the COVID-19 negative test, which means otherwise they will not let you in. And also when you return from these countries, you need to be negative. Now let's talk about the future, which will be a bit problematic because nobody really knows what will happen right now. I mean, the international agreements are in place, which means even though there may be some long-term border checks within the Schengen area, it's like impossible to get rid of all these measures because, well, it would be illegal and most of the member states would pay very serious fines, and I believe they will think twice about doing that before they do that. But realistically, I believe that the border checks on the borders will stay for some time. Some of the member states like France or Denmark or Sweden have already announced that they will continue the border checks till October or so. But from the members of the European Parliament, there are currently some calls for any kind of a united plan for the whole European Union to lift the measures taken against the coronavirus and to do it in some coordinated way, which I believe is logical, because every time you close the border or you open the border, it's always based on the two things. Right now, the Czech government has lifted the ban to go to Poland, for example, but Poland doesn't accept any foreigners, so does it make any sense? No, it doesn't. And it's a really stupid decision. I mean, if I want to open the border, I need to have at least two sides that will agree upon it. And if I don't have them, then it's like a pointless decision and waste of everybody's time. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Czech government. You're a waste of time. Anyway, so the future, I don't think that the Schengen area will die. Will it be somehow changed? Probably. The border checks will stay for some time. I think that the ban on traveling between the states will be lifted in a few weeks, I guess, maybe months, I don't know. But you will still have to go through some official borders to get to the other countries, just to keep the governments informed who is where, which I think is sensible during the time of such a crisis. But based on the current law, you cannot do this indefinitely, so in the end there will need to be either some joint decision of all member states to change the rules for the free movement in the Schengen area, or we will have to get back to the way it was, and who knows what it will be like after that. Right now, people are really unhappy with these decisions, so I kind of am optimistic that it will change for the better soon. Just 2 days ago there were large protests on the Polish, Czech and German borders that were protesting against this travel ban across the border, which I think is very reasonable. So I believe that in time these bans will be lifted and we will be able to cross the border freely again. You know, the side effect of the Schengen area is that people actually who live here at the border are probably living in the Czech Republic, working in Poland, or the other way around, and even families are divided. Some live here in the Czech Republic, some live in Poland. Like, most of these border towns actually live like one city, and right now they're divided and they're not used to it, and either the governments will have to tell people, okay, you will not see your families for a long time, or you will not be able to return to work or go to the doctor. I know people on the Polish border who have doctor in the Czech Republic, and right now they cannot go to the doctor. At the time of a pandemic, that's really stupid. Come on, governments, be serious. So I believe that the voice of the people will eventually win in this, and in the end we will return back to the way it was, at least to some degree. Okay, so I hope that you found this video helpful, that you understand what it means to live in the Schengen area or in the European Union as a whole, and that I shed a little bit light on what life is here in Europe right now during the coronavirus crisis. And if you like this video, please give me a like, subscribe to my channel, check out my other social media for some other interesting content, and see you in the next video. Have fun.